Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order this morning. I now call the meeting of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education to order. I'll ask Commissioner Nelson to lead us in prayer.
Good morning to everybody. Join me, please, as we speak to the Lord about this. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for the privilege you've given us to serve the state of Alabama. We all have a role here today, and we ask your wisdom and guidance as we fulfill those roles. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Will everyone stand to recite the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Say, please call the roll.
Amy Price,
Here.
Stan Nelson. Here. Ann Forbes. Jody Singleton.
Present.
Paul Kennedy.
Here.
Larry Turner. Here. Rod Scott.
Here.
Miranda Bolden. Shane Spiller.
Here.
Terry Welch.
Here.
Okay. Payne Meadows. Here. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Purcell. Eighth would like to welcome Commissioner Meadows, who has been appointed to serve on the board for the 2nd District. Commissioner Meadows is a certified public accountant with 25 years of experience in public accounting with services including auditing, tax, bookkeeping, and payroll. A native of Lowndes County, he and his twin brother maintain a timber and cattle operation in Lounsboro. Commissioner Meadows is a member of the Alabama Society of Certified Public Accountants, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and enjoys working with local civic and service organizations. Commissioner Meadows earned 2 degrees from Auburn University, a BS in Business Administration, and a BS in Agriculture, Business, and Economics. His wife, Jennifer Meadows, is a speech language pathologist for Butler County Schools. They are parents of 2 daughters, Kathleen, age 7, and Sarah Allen, age 15, both students at Bortdale Academy. Welcome, Commissioner Meadows. We'll move to item 3, approval of the agenda. Everyone should have had time to review the agenda. The chair entertains a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any comments or questions? The chair entertains a motion to accept the agenda for the December 13th, 2024 meeting. Do we have a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The agenda is approved. Item 4, consideration of the minutes from September 13th. Everyone should have had time to review the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? The chair entertains a motion to approve the minutes of the September 13th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion?
Still moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The minutes are approved. Item 5 is the chairman's report. I would like to welcome all of our guests and acknowledge any presidents if they are present with us this morning. Do you have any university?
None declared.
All right. Well, I hate my back is to you guys. I have all of you this morning. Each year, the University of Alabama Graduate School recognizes master's and doctoral alumni who continue to bring distinction to UA and their academic programs through their many professional accomplishments. Dr. Purcell was recently recognized as one of the 2024 Centennial Graduate Scholars Award recipients. Congratulations, Dr. Purcell, for this outstanding achievement. All right, per the commission's bylaws, as chairman, I'm required to appoint commissioners to each of our 2 standing committees. Based on that requirement, I'd like to make the following appointments. For the Academic Affairs Committee, I'd like to appoint Commissioner Turner as chair and Commissioners Spiller, Welch, and Forbes to the committee. The Financial Affairs Committee, I'd like to appoint Commissioner Singleton as chair and Commissioners Kennedy, Scott, and Meadows as members of the committee. I'm also required to appoint an executive committee. The executive committee is empowered to act on behalf of the commission between regularly scheduled meetings of the commission, with said action being subject to ratification by the full commission at a regular or special meeting held in accordance with all laws requiring open and public meetings. The bylaws state that the committee shall consist of the chair, vice chair, and such other commissioners as appointed by the chairman, the number of which shall not exceed 4. The executive committee appointments are as follows: myself as chair, and Commissioner Nelson as vice chair, Commissioner Turner as Academic Affairs Chair, and Commissioner Singleton as Financial Affairs Chair. Item 6, the Executive Director's Report. Now we'll turn it over to Dr. Purcell for the Executive Director's Report.
They have it here. Yeah. I had a lot of activity in the last tons of people there, and then certainly people online, lots of speakers. And there is a speaker that you may not recognize there, but there I am. And every Commission's artificial intelligence thing. They're going to come out with recommendations about how we should do that, both in K through 12 and in higher ed. There'll be different rules for different folks. Young folks don't necessarily need to create things because they may end up creating a nuclear bomb or something that goes off through artificial intelligence. So anyway, there's a lot of discussions about what people should know when. And anyway, lots of arguments and stuff. So it's a pretty exciting time for all of us in education, trying to figure out what we do with this new technology. Tomorrow. There we go. Also, they had a chance from an agency, American Council on Education has a journal. They asked me to write about our FAFSA completion stuff, to talk about how great Alabama has been on that. So it was nice. It was a good honor to do that. There I am. And then we went to the inauguration of a new president, Stanford Angione. He's actually been interim for a long time there and has done a really good job legislatively in getting support for the historic institution there. The big change right now in higher ed, I think, and actually in K through 12, is really about aligning everything to the workforce. Before, we used to have this thing where we would talk to the kids about this stuff, interests, goals, careers, and you just create whatever you want in your life. But now we've had to be more targeted because it's all about building our economy and sustaining it. The jobs war and the Great Reset, you've seen me sort of advocate for these. We've actually built some new tools to help us sort of decide how do we take the limited state money and invest in communities and make it work better. So there's a report out of Florida that really talks about how education comes through the economies, and really it talks about the location of the institutions, our economic engines amongst themselves. But I wanted to talk about this, which some of you have seen, but really, how do you build local economies out of this type of information? So those of you in business school, do you remember the Boston Consulting Group Matrix? It's sort of like the life cycle of a product, and we're going to talk about it. And I'll talk about it for those of us who are lay people is children. You know, as a children, you start out being very expensive. Diapers themselves, the expenses, and they don't seem to give you much in the first month or so. And eventually a personality shows up, but it's not there. Well, that's the bottom left corner, a lot of expenses. And then finally, you rose up to be a teenager. And you show promise, but you're still a teenager, and that's not really how adults act. So that's problematic, and they still spend, and you think they spend a lot of money, because then you got to pay them to go to college sometimes, and boom. And it's a drag. And then eventually they get to the right where they're making money. The upper right corner is they're the rising star. Everybody loves them. They got new children. You're a grandparent. It's wonderful and everything. And you come into your Christmas events and everything. And then finally you get to the last stage where they're the cash cow. They actually bring and buy Christmas presents for you rather than using you buying the presents. So, you know, the world changes. So you sort of have this cycle, and these terms are pretty much how the business people talk, except they don't use dogs spelled that way. But anyway, that's the cycle. But what if we looked at our economies to see, does this model work? So when you think about the model, you're losing money to the left, but and to the right. So you end up with this thing, these dogs, here's the details of it. But imagine, does everybody know what a puma is? Rod, do you know what a puma is?
No.
All right, it's a small animal. No. No, a puma is a public use microdata area. So the federal government, in their wisdom, has demarcated every 100,000 location of people into a little geographic area. So these are all the pumas in America, and this is how the economy looks. So you have low levels of education, weak workforce conditions. This is sort of struggling economies. And then you have economy that grows up to be a teenager and is making progress, but still is somewhat of a drain on the government or whatever, needs some subsidy. And then you have the successful people who sort of pay for the rest of us. And then you have the cash cows where people sort of survive based on residual successes in their past. And then eventually they have to be retooled and developed into a new economy, which may require investment. So you start the circle over and over again. Everybody ready? So these are the 100,000 communities. The question is, where is Alabama in this matrix? Is everybody excited? But here are our workforce regions, and you can see we're sort of where we thought we might see ourselves. And the question is, how do we as education help make that better? And I sort of want you to concentrate on two of these, Southeast and East, these guys right here, because we found in our metrics some very interesting things. But first, here's our workforce regions, and remember the 100,000 little populations? So a lot of these will be encased in the workforce regions. And so you'll see that. Then you can look at both the Southeast and the East being their colors. And you can sort of see the bigger bubbles, them combined, and the little bubbles are where they are. So you can sort of see that their economy sort of floats with each other. So you have to work through, how do you invest in these people and make this happen? So for context, this is Alabama. So what do you think Georgia looks like? Does Georgia look different? What do you think? That's a good economy, huh? What about Florida? Whoa, they look pretty good. And then you can actually look at District of Columbia, which is, sort of a communist state, very different. It's not really a state, it's a whatever it is. But what they have is they have a lot of smart people come in every time there's a new regime coming in. And then they have one part of their community of 100,000 people right here, which are sort of workers for those people. So it's real smart government people who do our work, and then there's people that work for them in that circle. And the question is, how do you help that economy be supported and better? And then you can have places like Nebraska, which is very different than Alaska. Alaska gets everything out of the ground. Everybody gets a subsidy that's been there for a while from the oil. So their economy is sort of a cash cow. It just drops in your lap and keeps on serving. So if we look at this, which you all saw at least once or twice, this is where Alabama fits. So the concept here is this is the median. And so if you have high need, you're over here. And so you want to be over on the lowest need. Does that make sense? So having a high need is what you have to fix. So this is our state. These are our regions, and we're going to highlight both the Southeast and then in a minute, so what you'll see though is Southeast, which is Dothan, Enterprise-ish, Headland, is right here, having the highest need in the state for bachelor's degrees. And they have a very high need in having people having some education beyond high school. So compared to the rest of the country, they're very heavy in having people with high school completion only, even though you want them to have more. And what that does is it impacts their economy. So the labor force participation is very low. You end up with a lot of persons working in volatile industries. They're the lowest in median annual wages, and they're the lowest in median family income, and more people on welfare, social services than anybody. Is that where you want your economy to be? So that's the question. How can we do it? Well, there's one nice thing about that region. What is the best thing they do? Where is their lowest need? We'll go back. The associate degree. You see that associate degree? Linda Young, who just retired, she spent her lifetime professional career producing associate degrees in that community. So we've overproduced in a way. But what's nice about that production is that allows us, if we need more bachelors, is to take those persons and say, hey, guys, we need you to upskill for the sake of the greater good for this community and bring in some opportunities. Right now, the industry that's there is sort of mirroring what the workplace is, and businesses that need a little bit higher skills are not going to come there. And so that's why your wages end up becoming suppressed. So now we're going to look at Gadsden, Anniston, a whole different story. As you know, from Headland and Dothan, those places, they got good bones, but it's pretty much agriculture. They don't have too much toxic waste because it's just plowed fields whenever there's not a house. So it's really easy to build something there. This place, Gadsden, has the opposite because it had, some hard industry. So did Anniston because they had a military base that did some bizarre things there, like destroying weapons and stuff. So they need sort of things to have happen. So all these economies got to their place very differently. But notice they ended up in the same place, these particular regions. They're very high in the need for people to have a bachelor's. Again, their high school completion only numbers is second only to the South there. And then their labor force participation is low. Their volatile industries is high. We need to address a better mix of their economy. Median wages are low. Family income is low, and again, large participation in social welfare. So the charge for our generation of educators is to help address our economies, to realign our workforce to the needs of the communities. And we'll have some conversations later about that. So for that region, I would prescribe that we would try to get more folks to have a bachelor's. We would encourage more people to get beyond associates. A high school diploma only. And then an advantage we have in both those regions, because their associate's degrees were high, is that we could perhaps provide stipends for people that have associates to finish out and be very quickly in to help our economy there. And so that's sort of an idea and plan we have thinking. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Everybody excited about changing the world?
Dr. Selden, is there any data showing that if we move the legal education industry involved?
Yes. Remember the second quadrant, which is sort of like the teenager? Sometimes that investment isn't overnight. They show promise. You may get an industry or two, but you got to wait a little while. So there is a period, and I've looked through all the 50 states, and you can sort of see that pattern. So there is a cycle, and some of it is you may end up having higher credentials than what the economy displays for a period of time. But if you don't build it, they will not come. So it's human capital is just like other capital. You can't just have one piece of the capital picture. You really have to have something for the economy. Does that make sense? It's just like when Mercedes came to Tuscaloosa. Mercedes said, we're going to have a plant there, but we only want people with a bachelor's. And all of us, I worked at Shelton Community College at the time, and it was like, what? Now, eventually, they got okay with us as we built the curriculum and made sure it was sanctified and it was all done the German way. God bless America and all that. So, but in the beginning, they just wanted those bachelor guys. They wouldn't have come to Alabama, to Tuscaloosa, if it hadn't been for the reputation of the University of Alabama. And so that's what we're saying is the importance of all those kind of components. Anybody else? Rod, you're an economic development person from Gadsden. Any thought?
I have a lot of thoughts about it. And just to give everybody an idea, Gaston is an old industrial city. It lost its workforce. Let's just say it's lost its companies because of all the technology change that has occurred. So the real question, what do you do now to impact Gaston based upon where it is with housing, education, so that 50 years from now, it's a viable city? Because it's not gonna change overnight.
Right.
It's gonna take time, so it's gonna take stages and steps for its development. And that's the real challenge. How do you tie politics into that type of development?
I do think that Gadsden and actually Jacksonville, Anniston, they're right on the interstate. So they're close to Atlanta. So there is a market there. There's some possibilities. And the same thing with Headland and Dothan. The Enterprise is you're close to the I-10 and you're close to the beaches, which is an attractive thing. Y'all are close to the mountains and the mecca of country music and those kind of things. So everybody has their gifts, but the most important component is making sure your human capital aligns with the opportunities that you have and do it well. So anyway, those are things to think about, and we're going to get into more detail of that one day. But we're going to have budget requests today. This is our longest board meeting of the year, guys. So just sit in and enjoy. But we're just mostly going to do modest increases in existing cost centers. Veronica's going to talk about that. And we are going to request some ongoing programs that right now are paid under, what do you call it? One-time money and make it a full-time. So we do have a brochure that we are working on. It's close to done. And it shows everybody's picture. Even the new guy gets a picture. Anyway, so it just sort of talks about our agency. So everybody is reminded how important we are. It sort of shows the productivity and what's popular at our campuses. And then our budget request, which Veronica will get into, but you can feel free to have a brochure to have for yourself. And if you want to share it with kinfolk and all, we're glad to provide you extras. So the big thing we're moving over is the Re-Engage grant. Is a grant that helps people who are coming back to college and trying to get their first degree in a major that's in high demand. We provide a payment for college for them. I think it's $3,000 for universities and $1,500 for community colleges. The thing is when we got the initiative, we all were on the 6% cap, so they put it in the one-time money, and it doesn't feel like it's real until it gets on the real side when you get annual renewals. But so we have all these programs, and last time we have 38 majors or CIPs that were qualified for this. We are this year, starting in the spring, adding another 113 majors to that list, which will allow more people to access this. And it's for adults. This is for adults coming back to college, have some college and no degree. We're also going to change some things. Last time we said first degree, so you could work toward your associate or you could work toward your bachelor's. But if you had an associate, we wouldn't let you go for a bachelor's. We're going to seek an amendment to the legislation to allow people who have an associate's to also get money to get a bachelor's. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, anyway, look for those things. So we get more detail later. We have discussion items. And first, we're going to have our speaker, and Margaret Cobble will come forward and introduce her.
Thank you, Dr. Purcell, and good morning and happy holidays to everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Sarah Ortbaugh. Sarah is a native of St. Louis, Missouri. She is a graduate of the University of Alabama, where she's currently a civil engineering doctoral student. Sarah's research focuses on water quality and accurately characterizing contaminants. Please welcome Graduate Research Scholar awardee, Sarah Ortbaugh.
Thank you for that. So yes, I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit and then talk about some of my research. So a little bit of my path at UAI started with my bachelor's degree in the fall of 2019. And then shortly after that COVID happened, I tried to get involved in undergraduate research that year. And then the week later, we all got sent home and never went back. So tried again about a year later and was able to get into a lab, and that's the lab I'm still currently in. So I did some undergraduate research in dissolved organic matter and characterizing that. And then I did a non-thesis master's looking at little media packets of that can characterize microbial contaminants and whether they still work when they're technically expired or not. And then a little bit about me in general. I'm a big Alabama football fan. I like to cook, that's some homemade pasta, and then I like to travel and be adventurous. And so I've really found a home in Alabama, and it's been great being here the past about 5 years now. And then I also want to continue working in the fields of water and wastewater research. And so then a little more about my research. So I'm going to talk about 2 different projects I've been working on, and they're both about water and quantifying contaminants. So first, the GRSP has been a great help in allowing me to have more time for my research. I haven't had to be a teaching assistant, so I can focus solely on the research aspect of what I've been doing. And then I was able to go to the EPSCoR conference in Omaha in October, and I got to present my work as a poster and then explore the city a little bit. And it's also brought some great networking opportunities. So then drinking water and wastewater. So drinking water is obviously that water that you drink comes out of your tap, and then wastewater, when it goes down the drain or toilet, that is also being treated before it goes into a river or lake or whatever it goes next. And then these two kind of intertwine with potable reuse. So sometimes they cycle that water back, and so they're all connected. And so then the contaminants I'm focusing on are PFAS. So this is a class of thousands of different chemicals, and they're all very toxic, and some of them are carcinogenic, so they can cause cancer. And then they're all man-made chemicals, and they all have carbon-fluorine bonds. They're in pretty much everything that you want to use on a daily basis, including those nice waterproof jackets and stain-resistant clothing, and then like microwave popcorn bags, the non-stick Teflon pans, all of those things. They're very useful, but not good for you. So the EPA has released drinking water regulations for 6 of these contaminants. And then it's expected that about 10 to 15% of drinking water utilities will have to put in new treatment technologies to be able to remove them from the water to maintain compliance. And so the EPA has also been monitoring 29 of these contaminants throughout the United States. And what we can see is that they're in pretty much every state. They're pretty widespread. Alabama's at about 34% of their utilities have detected 1 or more of these contaminants, but some are at lower levels, so wouldn't need further treatment. But and then this is the map that I created so far of all of the raw data. And then we've also been working to build an interactive PFAS database map for the state of Alabama specifically. So my lab has been working with the Alabama Water Institute and then the Center for Advanced Public Safety. And so this will be a GIS database, which is Geographic Information Systems. And it's basically just going to be a dynamic tool to be able to visualize and analyze the PFAS concentrations in different drinking water utilities. And then it'll be publicly available for all people that are interested to be able to see it and use it. And then it'll support environmental management and cleanup opportunities and facilitate data-driven decision-making. So that's all the drinking water side. On the wastewater side, we've been doing some more lab work, and so PFAS, like I said, they're a class of thousands of chemicals, but you can really only test for like 40 to 50 of them. So there's all these that you can't test for. So we've been looking at using organic fluorine, so carbon fluorine measurements as like a singular bulk measurement, as opposed to just measuring each individual one. And so you can see the kind of graph. So we're looking at specifically adsorbable organic fluorine, and then a specific section of that are the PFAS that you can actually analyze for. And so this is kind of the fancy machine that we get to use to analyze the organic fluorine. It's called a combustion ion chromatograph. And then there's an EPA method to tell you kind of how to run it and make sure you're accurately quantifying it. And so for this, we've been working with the Water Tower Institute, which is located in Georgia. And we've been collecting samples at 19 different points throughout a wastewater treatment plant. So there's kind of the plant flow, and then me sampling some sludge. And so from all of this, we've seen that our target PFAS data, those specific 40 compounds that we can look for, are only making up about 5 to 10% of the total amount of organic fluorine. And all organic fluorine is man-made, all different contaminants. It could be other PFAS that you can't test for, or pharmaceuticals or pesticides or something else, but they're not really good for you in any way. So this kind of creates a more comprehensive measurement to abate that underestimation of those targeted analytes. And so overall, PFAS are detected pretty frequently throughout the entire United States. And they're frequently underestimated, but there are methods being developed, like I was just talking about, that could account for that. And then those target PFAS only account for a few % of the total organic fluorine. And that's important to be able to better quantify and characterize all of these contaminants. So I'd like to thank all of the people who have been a part of this, specifically Alabama EPSCoR has been great, and National Science Foundation, and then It Takes a Village, so my lab group and everyone. So, and then thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here. So does anyone have any questions or anything?
What water do you drink?
Water can have them too. Yeah, it's scary, but on it, so yeah, it depends on where you are in Alabama. Some areas are safer than others. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the alphabet operation? Is it 1196? They bottle water, I think, directly out of the ground there.
Not familiar. Generally, groundwater is a little better than surface water, so groundwater is probably okay.
I got a quick question. So most small municipalities use a plant-based purification treatment system. Will it over time, will it purify the water, or whether it's drinking water or wastewater, or is mechanical better, or how does that relate?
So it really would depend on kind of your influent water quality. So all of the plants are still required to meet the EPA regulations. So whether it's whatever treatment type, it should be okay. I know like Gwen, and I don't know if that's a county or city, I think Gwen in Alabama, yeah, they had a big contamination issue. So they actually had to implement some new treatment technologies, and then they'll have to change that out every few years. But yeah, I think just over time you have to replace things, but whatever it is.
They do.
Yeah, so the data for the map for Alabama, we're getting all of that data from ADEM.
You only test for 40 of the PFAS, and what are you doing to figure out a way to test for all of them?
Yeah, so it's based on the analytical standards that are available. So in order to make a pure standard to accurately quantify it is really difficult. So those are only available for about 40 to 50 analytes. The rest, like some of them, they don't even know what they are. So they've been producing, the manufacturers just keep producing new ones because the EPA tries to regulate the old ones. So those organic fluorine measurements can kind of help to measure them as a whole, as opposed to trying to get every single one and figure out how to analyze every single one. Just using a whole measurement is kind of easier and more streamlined.
Figure it out. Thank you.
Is there a difference between fluorine and fluoride?
Yes. So fluoride is going to be the ion. So fluoride is okay up to, you don't want too much fluoride. But the organic fluorine is specifically carbon bonded to fluorine, and fluoride is just like a free ion. So they are, yes, different. So
Benefits of chlorine, or is it helpful?
Yes, so chlorine in your drinking water will make sure that no bacteria can grow. So if you don't have enough chlorine, you could get bacterial contamination. So you want to keep some chlorine in the lane.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. Quite impressive.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 8, decision items. Each decision item will be voted on individually. Any questions may be directed to the staff presenter. Our first decision item A will be presented by Ms. Veronica Harris.
Good morning.
Okay, the Code of Alabama requires each agency department to prepare a budget request to carry out its proposed plans. This request was due by law on the 1st of November. So in order to be in compliance, it was prepared and submitted. However, if there are changes today, we will submit a budget revision to EEO. Now, we requested $77,859,213 for FY 26. In this request, there were no increases for operation and maintenance, better known as O&M. However, we did request some increases for our student assistance programs and for the adult scholarship program that was originally funded through supplemental budgets. AIC has 55 programs within 6 appropriation units. 6 of these programs are new requests. We're asking for $200,000 for the Hunger Free Campus Initiative. This program will expand access to healthy food for college students struggling with hunger and basic needs insecurities. $100,000 is needed for the Alabama Literacy and Numeracy Initiative, which will support Alabama colleges of education with operations and academic programs to meet their demands. The historical Black colleges and universities appeared in our budget in FY 23. It was not funded for FY 24 nor for FY 25. Therefore, we're asking $650,000 to restore this line item in our FY 26 budget. We are requesting $250,000 for the Alabama Special Education Rural Teacher Scholarship to establish a scholarship to address the shortage of special education teachers in rural schools across the state. In order to better protect student enrollment records for 38 public institutions, AIC is requesting a new line item for cybersecurity insurance in the amount of $150,000. This will cover prevention, data recovery, attack response, notification, and legal costs associated with cybersecurity breach. $100,000 is requested for the National Student Clearinghouse Accountability Matrix to track Alabama high school graduates who wish to attend out-of-state colleges and universities. When planning this budget request, we made several assumptions. Due to the reappropriation of $665,048 from FY 24 from our O&M, we did not request an increase for FY 26. Although we realize the cost of personnel and benefits have increased since we had 3 retired senior staff positions in FY 24, we would take up some of this cost by filling these positions at a lower salary. Also, funds will be reallocated to other major object codes to cover equipment purchases. A total of $1,500,000 was requested for 3 of our student assistance programs. That's the Alabama Student Assistance Program, the Alabama Student Grant Program, and the National Guard Program. Each of those programs, we asked for a $500,000 increase. STEM major teacher recruitment, you teach, we asking for $1 million. And $200,000 is asked for the Network of Alabama Academic Libraries, better known as NAIL. $2 million was asked for Reengage Alabama's grant program. And this is basically to move from the supplemental budget, and all other programs administered by AIC are being asked to be level funded. Now, I realize we're seeing a lot of decreases, but right here, we had 665,048, and that money came from money that from FY 24 that was reverted, but then it was reappropriated and it came in this budgeted expenditure amount. So we're only asking for what we actually received in FY 25 in our beginning appropriation. So these two figures together equates to that amount. So it looks as if we got this decrease, but we're just asking for level funding because we were good stewards. We saved some money. And so that's why we're asking for that amount. Also, you can see here that Reengage Alabama, we're asking here for a $2 million increase. Now, $8,885,000. That all was in supplemental. It never has come into our regular appropriation. So our goal and our objective here is to get these funds in our FY 26 appropriation. So in order to do that, we're asking for $2 million so that perhaps this request will be honored. And down here, you will see that we're asking for money for NAIL. The net effect is $110,878, but we asked for $200,000. NAIL has not been funded since it has been funded, but not significantly since it was 2008. It's like a 37% decrease. So they really need the money. Therefore, we are asking for $200,000. And you will see here that there is a budget decrease overall for 24.95%. And again, let me note to you that this decrease is from combination of several reversions, and therefore the money was reappropriated, so it does look as if we have a big decrease there. Additionally, you will see exactly what those carryovers are. You can see right here, this is what we reverted in FY 24, and then it was reappropriated to us in FY 25. And then you will see here, these are the non-reverting accounts. These are accounts that are not education trust funds, so they don't come through that. So they're not reverting. So these funds included with these funds would equate to this amount here, the reversions and the carryovers. At this time, I would like to request that you will approve this budget. And also at this time, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
All right, the chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the executive budget request fiscal year 25-26. Is there a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions, comments? All in favor of approving, say aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The executive budget request is approved. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I respectfully abstain? I've got a conflict with some of
Sure.
those line items. Thank you.
Sure, please note, there's one abstention. Our next decision item B, the consolidated budget recommendation, will be presented by Dr. Jim Good.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning to discuss the consolidated budget recommendation for FY 25-26. This annual budget recommendation is one of the core functions of the commission's responsibilities as outlined in the Code of Alabama. And I thought that I was going to throw a lot of numbers at you this morning, but I think Ms. Veronica may have me beat, so we'll just see how that goes. But one thing I want to mention here is, as you know, the education budget is primarily based on the ETF, right? And these slides highlight some of the sources of fund for the ETF fund. And you can see that 92 cents of every dollar for the ETF come from income and sales taxes. You can also see that income tax has grown by 56% over the last 5 years and accounts for about 68% of that revenue. So income tax primarily funds the ETF, as well as sales tax, which has grown by 22% over the last 5 years and accounts for about 24% of the revenue. Everybody, does that make sense to everybody? So when you're out doing your Christmas shopping this year and you're paying all that sales tax, just remember that you're contributing to the ETF fund. This slide looks at some of the considerations behind our recommendations. Historically, the commission has used the least amount between the appropriation cap, which is essentially a rolling average of the last 15 years, which excludes the high and the low years, and the secondary spending limit, which has been established by the legislature. So we typically have to use the lower of those two calculations. For this year's recommendation, we used the least amount, which was the 6% secondary spending limit established by the legislature. And you can see here in green that equated to about slightly more than $144 million. And so as the red arrows here show, a lot of that was driven by by the language in the Act 2023-390. So our recommendation starts in November with our budget hearings, and our budget hearings are held in November, and this gives institutions an opportunity to highlight their financial needs and challenges. And you can see some of those needs here listed in those bullet points. But I would be remiss if I did not recognize and acknowledge ACE Financial Affairs Committee, which is chaired by Stan Nelson and Commissioners Paul Kennedy, Rod Scott, and Jody Singleton. And I want to take an opportunity to thank and acknowledge that committee for their work on this project, not only on this budget recommendation, but all the other financial things that we do throughout the year. So I want to thank you for your time and your dedication. But what we do is we take our recommendations divided by 4 different fund categories that are priorities that we talked about in that prior slide. And this slide shows how those priorities have shifted over time. And I want you to pay particular attention to the 24-25 year, where you can see that 51% of the allocation was in inflationary costs and deferred maintenance. And that was based off of the budget hearings that we had that year. If you'll remember some of our conversations, we heard of construction projects that increased by 40% during the course of the construction just because of inflationary costs. And so we added additional funds that year to address those costs. This year during our budget hearings, they were more focused on personnel related costs. So you can see here that about 64% of our recommendation is in personnel and salaries, and then mandatory funds related to personnel and salaries like insurance and retirement contributions. This chart looks at the distribution of those 4 fund priorities. And again, you can see that 64% is based in personnel and salaries, and then mandatory funds. And you can see that 20% of the recommendation is to address the inflationary costs that I previously mentioned, as well as 16% related to weighted credit hours to help fund high cost academic programs. So let's briefly look at these 4 categories in a little bit more detail. This first category looks at personnel and salaries, and you can see the calculation there. It represents 32%, or about a third of the total recommendation. And it's calculated or reflects a 2% increase over the prior year's appropriation. So this is an increase in the prior appropriation. And it's funds to recognize challenges related to personnel costs. You know, institutions work in very competitive environments, and they need funds to keep salaries competitive, to keep pace with higher cost of living, and attract and retain qualified staff, faculty and staff. The second category or fund priority looks at mandatory funds, which we've talked about. This reflects 32% of the total recommendation and reflects funds from institutional needs assessment reporting. So this is institutional needs reported by the institutions. You can see here that this table shows historical increases for the teacher retirement system. I want to point out this doesn't include additional areas like insurance contributions and PHIP contributions and those types of things. So when you think about this becomes relevant when you think about there are Alabama Wisconsin universities employ over 34,000 full-time faculty and staff. This looks at inflation. This looks at inflationary cost adjustments, which is the third priority that we're talking about, and it represents about 20% of the total recommendation. And this is calculated with a 1.25% increase of the prior year's appropriation. Now, this increase is lower than the HEPI estimate of 3.4%, which means that our recommended growth is lower than what college universities would need to keep up with inflation. Does that make sense? Now, you've heard me mention HEPI before. This slide compares the Consumer Price Index with the HEPI index, and I want to point out a few things. If you look at the components of the Consumer Price Index on the left, you can see that 78% of that metric is based off of housing, transportation, food, and medical care, right? So that's basically what prices of consumers, what we spend. The column on the right looks at the Higher Education Price Index, and that is primarily composed, 77% of that metric is primarily composed of faculty salaries, clerical costs, fringe benefits, and administrative salaries. Does that make sense to everybody? So HEPI is kind of like the CPI, if you will, for college and universities. Now, this is relevant to us because one of the priorities this year for our recommendation was faculty salaries and benefits and mandated employee costs. And you can see that the majority of the HEPI index is related to those personnel costs. Does that make any questions about that? Okay. Our fourth fund priority deals with weighted credit hours, and this represents about 16% of the total recommendation. It reflects a 1% increase over the prior year's appropriation, but that increase is distributed based off of weighted credit hours. So institutions with high cost programs, institutions with larger graduate programs would receive a larger portion of the allocation based off of this part of the distribution. This pie chart looks at the distribution of the recommended increase by sector. You can see here that universities would receive 73% out of this recommendation. And this has been historic. This has been consistently historic over time. In this recommendation, community colleges receive about 18.6%. That's consistent over time as well, although historically there's been a little variation between the community colleges and the state level programs, but the universities, excuse me, have been pretty consistent. So this slide looks at the budget recommendation by institution. And I know these numbers are small here, but you've got this as part of your handout materials for today's meeting. I want to point out that this column here in blue represents the prior year's appropriation, which is what some of our increases are based on. These two columns in green here represent the institution's EBO request to the Executive Budget Office. And I want to point out that there's some variations in those percentages here, and that's because of how institutions report their capital projects. Some institutions include their capital projects as part of H requests, while other institutions include their capital projects in different budget requests for the EBO. So that's why there's some variation there in those percentages. This last percentage, or this last column of percentages in yellow here, represents H recommended budget request. And you'll also see some variation in those percentages. And that's because each institution is different, right? We talked about these different four fund groups. Each institution has a different number of employees. They have a different number of retirees. They have different credit hour production. That credit hour production is in in some cases, high cost academic programs. And in some cases, those high cost academic programs have a higher percentage of graduate coursework, right? Which carries an even higher weight. So there's a lot of variation in there. And we get questions occasionally about, well, we got, y'all recommend this much money for us, and their enrollment's going down and our enrollment's going up, right? There's a lot of moving pieces to this. It's a lot more than just headcount enrollment. In fact, headcount enrollment is not even a factor in our calculation. It's all based on credit hour production. That makes sense? So, any questions? Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks on the consolidated budget recommendation, but if I may, I'd like to ask Commissioner Nelson, the chair of our Finance Committee, to make some remarks on our budget hearings and this year's recommendation.
You want to come up there or just, that's good enough. Can everybody hear?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Hood, and Julie, and everybody else that worked with y'all on the allocation. Y'all do a great job for that. I was just, this is the fourth year that we've had budget hearings. I don't see anybody in here who was participant in that, but do we have anybody online, Jamarcus, that anyway, that's not important. But this is very similar to trying to put a square peg into a round hole. And I know sometimes you look at it and you want to know what were they thinking? Well, it is very difficult. Everybody, I was astounded this year at the dollar amount of the increase in retirement and insurance. It was astounding. And then when it comes to the total increase we're dealing with, we got 6%. That's kind of a indicator, for lack of a better word. Everybody's costs are going up exponentially more than that. So we really struggle with trying to get this thing to where it is. So there is a method to the madness, but at the end, it's probably more of an art than a science. Is that the way to say that?
That's fair.
Okay. But anyway, thank you so much for the work job done with it.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hood, and thank you to the Finance Committee. The chair entertains a motion to approve the committee's recommendation for the CBR fiscal year 25-26. Is there a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. The CBR consolidated budget recommendation is approved. Our next decision item, C, will be presented by Mr. Julian Rogers.
Good morning, Madam Chair. It's my privilege to present the report on Facilities Master Plan and Capital Projects Request for fiscal year 25-26 through fiscal year 29-30. Code of Alabama requires that each institution annually submit a 5-year Facilities Master Plan to the Commission. The 5 years reported have 3 time segments for the capital projects. The first year is the immediate year. The second year is the intermediate year, and the last 3 years make up the long-term portion of the report. The projects are further divided into 4 separate project categories: new construction or acquisition, renovation or major repairs, major capital equipment, and deferred maintenance or facilities renewal. For the next few slides, the charts on the left, which is right here, illustrate the division of the projects into 4 categories. The charts on the right, this chart, show the methods of funding, which include the Education Trust Fund, the Advancement and Technology Fund, the other state funding or other funds. In the immediate year, fiscal year 2026, the institutions estimate that their capital projects will exceed $2.95 billion. And as you can see right here, the biggest percentage of that is for new construction. And they are planning on supporting this with funds other than state funds. Estimates for capital projects in the intermediate year, which is fiscal year 27, exceed $2.6 billion. For the long-term section of this report, which includes fiscal years 28, fiscal year 29, and fiscal year 30, institutions estimate over $4 billion will be needed for capital projects. As you can see, they're planning on a good bit of that being in the renovation, and they do rely heavier on the education trust fund long term. In summary, institutions estimate $9.6 billion will be needed for proposed projects over the next 5 years. Of this amount, reports show that $5.31 billion will require the support of the Education Trust Fund or other state-related funds. Of the reported total, institutions expect $4.1 billion will be needed for deferred maintenance or remodeling of current structures. And as previously stated, $4.1 billion will be needed for deferred maintenance in the long term. And this is due in part to the fact that 36.7% of the buildings were built between 1960 and 1989. An additional 11.7% of the utilized space was constructed prior to 1960. Also, notice that a good bit of our buildings were built before 1900. And last year I was asked the question, was this space used for classroom space? And in answer to that, I looked back at the University of Alabama. They're one of our oldest campuses, and I thought that would be a good example. They have over 300 buildings, and 18 of them were built before 1900. And out of that 18, 8 are used for classroom space. Other buildings in that age category would include museums and the university president's residence. Historically, the state of Alabama has not provided regular funding for capital projects. However, in 2023, as well as in 2024, the institutions did receive one-time supplemental appropriations to be used for capital projects, including deferred maintenance. Normally, public institutions in Alabama fund capital projects by issuing their own bonds. In 2024, they paid in debt service $393.6 million. And that left them with an outstanding balance of over $4 billion in debt. This concludes my presentation, and if there are no further questions, I ask that the commission accept the report on facilities master plan and capital projects request for fiscal year 2025-26 through fiscal year 2029-30.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. The chair entertains a motion to accept the staff recommendations.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The requests are accepted. The motion carries. Item D. Our next decision item will be presented by Dr. McGill.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am back to talk about more administrative procedures. We're coming to the end, as I said last time. So this is the second round of hearing for the two rules that you all heard at our previous meeting in September. So the first one, final approval of repeal and new rule. This one deals with off-campus instructional sites. And this slide shows you an overview of this particular rule and what's been going through as far as convening our stakeholders and letting them know how this regulation will affect them. This deals with sites that are not on the main campus. And most of the sites that exist throughout the state of Alabama are, I would say, in the service area for an institution. So they are specifically trying to deliver instruction that serves the needs of their communities. Many of these are dual enrollment sites or industry sites, and AIC's responsibility for creating an inventory of these is what is controlled by this particular set of regulations. Now, since we presented them to you at the September meeting, we did get one significant piece of feedback that caused us to make a few changes to what was presented before. And those changes, I would consider them not substantive, like we're not adding new regulations, we're just adding a new organization that pulls out the statutory exemptions. So these are ones that the Code of Alabama says this particular site is exempt from AIC approval. And rather than kind of hiding that in the regulations, we pulled it out and made it its own section, which should make these even more usable for everyone else. So if the commission does agree that that is a good change to make, we do have support from our institutional stakeholders for that as well, then staff will recommend approval, final approval, that will bring this forward to the Legislative Services Agency, and then it will go through the process of becoming effective within the Alabama Administrative Code. So staff is recommending approval for this change.
All right, thank you, Dr. McGill. You've heard the recommendation for the repeal and new rule within the administrative procedures. The chair entertains a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item E, Dr. McGill.
Right, item E is just a repeal with no replacement. As we talked about last time, you all preliminarily approved this unanimously. There had been 3 attachments to the administrative procedures for program review. Those attachments, 2 of them have to do with service area lists that were more or less outdated, especially the community college ones. And then the third one was about consolidation, the merger of institutions. And so AIC is recommending repeal of all of these attachments so that the relevant current information can be distributed through our website and through guidelines documents. I do expect that the service area tables will come back to the commission so that it's clear what the service areas are. This does not, eliminating these attachments does not eliminate the service areas. Let me just make that clear. So with that, staff is recommending approval of this repeal.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item F, academic programs.
So as normally, we consider our 4-year institutions programs followed by the 2-year institution programs. We have got a handful today, so I'll try to go through these relatively quickly. The first one on the docket is from Athens State University. They are proposing a Bachelor of Science in Applied Management. Applied Management, just to make clear, Athens State does offer a degree at the same CIP code, and that CIP code is kind of the General Business Administration code. So we have put an extra condition on this program to say that the existing program still needs to meet its standard. But because it is a business program, there are a lot of students in this program, we're not expecting it to be a problem. Applied Management is a different program intended primarily for students who are transferring in from the Alabama Community College system. And there are 3 institutions, I believe, who submitted letters of support for this program. This is intended not as your typical kind of transfer degree for your general studies transfer, but as a way to transfer in Associate of Applied Science degrees. So these are usually your very technical, career tech focused degrees. And oftentimes students lose credit in transfer because there's no what I would call a home for those credits in the degree plans at baccalaureate institutions. So Athens State being, an institution that is fully populated by transfer students because they only offer junior and senior, wanted to create this degree program to accommodate more of that technical applied credit. And they're doing this through a vehicle in their business school. So the applied management, there are a few other examples, those of you who have an agenda. I think Troy has a program that can also do some similar things with a focus on education. So we're always pleased to see when the four-year institutions are doing good transfer work for the applied degrees. So the proposed program uses coursework that's already been developed by Athens State, and that means that it will not cost anything to implement. It will have several concentrations that again play to tracks that already exist at Athens State and also might be able to draw more credit from the community college. Those are leadership, manufacturing, small business management, and an individualized or tailored major. With that presentation, the staff is recommending approval for this new degree program.
Thank you, Dr. McGill. You've heard the recommendation for item F1. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 2A.
Right. So we are now considering Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, BSBA, in management proposed by Troy University. They also already have a degree at this same CIP code. So this will be a second program at the same code. The existing program is called Global Business. It's one of the most popular majors in Troy's business college. And so this major would likely also be very popular and has the existing major has concentrations in management already under it. And so Troy is proposing the new degree program to collect all of those management concentrations into a single program that can be more in-depth around management. Because it's related to an existing program, we have put that extra condition to maintain viability for the existing program. But again, we're not expecting that to be in any way a problem because we're talking about hundreds of students in probably both programs. Because it is related to that existing program, there are no new resources. And Troy is proposing a number of concentrations, most of which already exist and are assigned to other degree programs, but would be collected together under this management umbrella. And those are an individualized concentration, data analytics, entrepreneurship, hospitality, tourism, event management, HR management, marketing, promotion, risk management, sport management, and supply chain management. So they have a deep bench in their College of Business. With that, staff is recommending approval for the new BSBA in management.
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry.
He was going. He was going. He was going. You're good. Is there a second? Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 2B, Dr. McGill.
So we're looking at another Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, BSBA, out of Troy's College of Business. This one is in risk management and insurance, which is a more specialized degree program. As you may have just heard me say that Troy's management degree would have a concentration in risk management. That is going to continue, but they are also proposing a standalone degree program So it will not, students could choose to do a concentration in management and risk management or do a full degree in insurance and risk management. The idea being that there will be more in-depth instruction, particularly in finance and economics related to risk management. So as part of this degree program, students will be expected to achieve licensure through the Alabama Department of Insurance as insurance producers. And the existing concentration students have over a 90% success rate in achieving that licensure. Troy has been preparing for this program for a little while, meaning they've kept some faculty lines that have already been assigned and dedicated to them this program. So they're planning to hire 2 new faculty, 1 risk management tenure track and 1 instructor, both full-time, but it will not cost new funding. So that's why they've been kind of getting ready for this program to be delivered. So that's why you see there are no additional resources assigned to the program. With that, staff is recommending approval for the BSBA in risk management and insurance at Troy University.
For the staff recommendation for item 2B, is there a motion? Second.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. McGill. Item 3.
All right, the third item is from the University of South Alabama. They are proposing a Master of Science in Applied Statistics. So they currently offer a post-baccalaureate certificate, so at the graduate level in applied statistics. So this proposal would bring that degree program into a full degree program, the certificate into a full degree. They are finding that there is a strong demand from not just, the community who might like to have additional training in statistics, but also from graduate students in other departments. So especially doctoral students who are in marine and environmental sciences or toxicology or the College of Medicine, which are very high quantitative research fields. Their students are very interested in simultaneously pursuing this master's if it were offered. So that will have a dedicated, internal pipeline. In addition, University of South Alabama is discussing partnerships with Auburn University. Auburn's PhD in mathematics with statistics focus gets more applications than it can handle of very, very good candidates. And so they're proposing to share some of those who aren't accepted with South Alabama, who could then go into the PhD program once they complete this Master of Science. So obviously that would all need to be worked out. But the fact that the universities are collaborating in that way is very encouraging. Absolutely. There are some additional funds requested for this program. The majority of those, about $380,000 over 7 years, are related to 2 new graduate assistantships. So graduate students in this program would be assigned to teach undergraduate coursework in statistics, and the assistantship would support 2 students. There's also some minor, under $30,000 for recruitment and marketing. And in the very first year, in order to get it stood up with the new assistantships, there would be a modest reallocation of just under $30,000. And with that, staff is recommending approval for the program.
All right, Dr. McGill, is this your last one?
This is my last one.
Item
Yes.
B.
Okay, now this one is slightly different. So up to now, we've been talking about new programs. It's been a while since the commission has considered one of these because of the ways that staff has been encouraging post-implementation conditions to be met and going through new policies around post-implementation conditions. This is a consideration to amend post-implementation conditions for the University of West Alabama's Master of Athletic Training and Athletic Training. So we call that MAT and athletic training. This particular program is facing some unique challenges, and I'll describe a little bit about what we're considering, but I also want to let you know that we have a special guest who's going to talk a little bit about this program from the employer industry perspective. So there are only a handful of these Master of Athletic Training programs throughout the state. They're relatively new because this particular field has gone through some increased professionalization. Individuals used to be able to be licensed and certified at the baccalaureate level, and the field writ large shifted to a master's level. That has created kind of a higher demand and a reduced production of people who are qualified as athletic trainers. And given how important athletics is throughout the state of Alabama, addressing this shortage is something that has become a priority for the state. This particular program at UWA was one of the first to move to that master's level and achieve accreditation specialized through the Commission on Accreditation of Athletic Training Education, CATIE. It was approved in September 2016, but because of various factors, the implementation of the program was delayed until summer, it was approved by the Commission in 2016. And the implementation was delayed until 2020. And then the specialized accreditation with CATIE came through in 2022. So the recommendation from the commission or the staff is making is to start the post-implementation clock, 7-year clock, from the time at which the program received its specialized accreditation. So rather than when it was initially approved by the commission in 2016. So that would mean, if you do the math in your head, specialized accreditation at 22, then the program would be able to continue on its path through 2029. And then you would hear from it again at that point. But as I mentioned, there are some particular challenges that the field of athletic training faces. And I want to invite Mr. Chris King to address you all. Here's a little bit about his bio. And you can see he does look like the photo, which is excellent. Do you want to come on up here and I'll just hang out in the background?
Thank you. That's terrifying. I'm sorry to see that picture up there. That's suitable for scaring small children. But yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and as you read up there, I do a lot of stuff and of governmental affairs activities. But the biggest thing I'm most proud of is I was a high school teacher for 25 years. So I'm a retired teacher. But what I wanted to mention to you was about athletic training and where we are. We're kind of at a crossroads professionally. And it's not just about the masters being implemented. That is an issue. That is, our salaries have not increased very much. So kids are looking at it and going, well, do I stay in school that long? Do I spend that kind of money on education to get this salary? It's a math problem. And so salaries have bumped up a little bit, but they're still not to where we'd like them to be. And you're seeing a work-life balance issue because, I have to ask this question. So as an old teacher, I'm going to get classroom participation here. Who knows what an athletic trainer is? Or tell me what you think of when you think of an athletic trainer.
There's such a shortage.
Yes, ma'am.
Such a shortage.
A lot of times people think about the Damar Hamlin incident a few years ago, and those people that were on the field with Damar Hamlin those were the athletic trainers that were doing everything. The doctors were standing back and overseeing that, but those were the athletic trainers. That's the same degree that's coming out of West Al. It's the same program. And Damar Hamlin will be the first one to tell you that the kids in America need to have the same care he had. And it is something that is important. It's important to me. I spent all of my career on the high school level taking care of those kids. I now employ 20+ athletic trainers that cover about 22 high schools, and we try to take care of the kids as best we can. The demand is very high. But I will say, I do want to put a plug in here. Part of the shortage is really our own fault. On 21, we updated our Practice Act and now rated the #1 progressive practice act in the country, because we basically expanded our patient care. There's athletic trainers that in the big Bessemer Amazon plant. There's about 8 of them that work in there. Right down the road at the automobile industry, there's athletic trainers that work there. And the Toyota plant up in Huntsville, there's athletic trainers that work there. Who better would you want as an industry to prevent injury than somebody who is skilled to prevent injury? And that's where, we've also, so part of the shortage is our fault. But we need these programs. West Al's program has been around a long time. We need these programs to continue to expand and grow, and encourage people to enter into those programs as students and then stay here in Alabama and work in these traditional settings. So the traditional settings is where the shortage is greatest, and that is the high school and the college athletic training positions. And that's where schools are really struggling to get those people in there. So thank you for everything. Thank you for allowing me to come speak, and I'll answer any questions if anybody has any. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. King. We thought that it was especially important to give some context to the commission and those who are watching the meeting about this particular shortage and why the staff is recommending an amendment to the post-implementation conditions, which will allow West Alabama to continue growing its program and continue producing high-quality graduates in line with its specialized accreditation and mission for serving the western part of the state. With that, staff is recommending approval of this amendment.
All right, thank you, Dr. McGill. You've heard the recommendation for approval. Is there a motion?
I move. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 5. Ms. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. We're in the home stretch. Okay, I did want to point out that we have representatives from all 3 of the community colleges that are presenting programs today. So if you have any questions, we have the experts here. This first program, Chattahoochee Valley in electrical technology. This program will prepare graduates for employments in positions such as electronic equipment installers and repair workers. And those jobs are included on the 23-24 in-demand job list. This program was initiated as part of a multi-institution grant to enhance workforce training opportunities as part of the CHIPS for America initiative, which aims to restore U.S. leadership in semiconductor and advanced manufacturing. This is a $50 million federal grant, and it also includes 5 other post-secondary institutions across eastern Alabama and western Georgia. This program is designed to open pathways to a variety of careers in the semiconductor and advanced manufacturing sector. And as part of this effort, Chattahoochee Valley and Troy University have agreed to expand their existing articulation agreement to include this program and enable students to transfer seamlessly into Troy's BS degree in electronics engineering technology. The college also has an articulation agreement with Mississippi State University that will allow students to enroll in their BS degree in industrial technology. The proposed program will share the same lab space and equipment with the college's existing degree in industrial maintenance, which will keep the startup costs low. If funding from the $50 million grant is not available, does not come through, the college will use funds from another available ARPEDS grant to support the program. And over the implementation period, this college is expected to generate $2.5 million in tuition from this program. And with that, staff is recommending approval of this program.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6.
Thank you. This program is for Enterprise State Community College. It will prepare graduates for employment as manicurists and pedicurists and skin care specialists. And again, these are all included on the 23-24 statewide in-demand lists. This program is being developed and launched in partnership with the Troy Pike Center for Technology for dually enrolled high school students interested in pursuing professional certification in cosmetology. This program will meet the educational requirements necessary to prepare graduates for the professional excuse me, for the professional examinations required to become a licensed cosmetologist through the State of Alabama Board of Cosmetology. In year 1, dual enrollment courses will be taught by a credentialed adjunct faculty member. In year 2, the college plans to hire a full-time faculty member to expand the program. Enterprise has budgeted $458,000 to cover all faculty and administrative support over the first 7 years, and it will be located at facilities with suitable equipment provided at no cost to the institution. Over the implementation period, the program is expected to generate $900,000 in tuition. The staff is recommending approval of this program.
Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.
The next program is from Northeast Alabama. Actually, the next 2 programs are from Northeast Alabama Community College. This program will prepare graduates for entry-level employment as diagnostic medical sonographers and cardiovascular and radiologic technicians, which again, these are included on the 23-24 state in-demand list. Students will be required to complete 4 sonography preceptorships at participating healthcare facilities, and multiple local healthcare providers have already pledged support for these programs and these students to offer the clinical opportunities and to hire graduates. The college intends to seek accreditation through KHEP and the Joint Review Committee on Education in Diagnostic Medical Sonography. Once the accreditation is achieved, students will be eligible to sit for the American Registry for Diagnostic Medical Sonography exam to become registered DMSs, medical sonographers. Alabama does not have a state licensure process for medical sonographers, so only the degree and the National Registry are required for entry-level employment. This program will support the expansion of rural healthcare programs in the state and was awarded funding in the spring of this year through a $2.6 million fiscal year 23 state grant to establish rural centers for healthcare opportunities. This funding will be split equally between this program and the next program we will discuss. And over the implementation period, the program is expected to generate $1.2 million in tuition. And staff is recommending approval of this program.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. All opposed? The program is approved. All right, item 7B.
I got you.
Okay, the second program from Northeast Alabama. This program will prepare graduates for entry-level employment as medical laboratory technicians, also included on the 23-24 in-demand list. They're doing a good job of picking those positions that the state needs, so that's a positive. Students will be required to complete 4 practicum courses and required contact hours at partnering healthcare facilities. And again, many of the same providers that have pledged support for the diagnostic medical sonography program have also pledged support for this medical laboratory program. The college intends to seek accreditation through the National Accrediting Agency for Clinical Laboratory Sciences. Once this is achieved, graduates will be eligible to sit for the certification exams offered by the American Society for Clinical Pathology or the American Medical Technologists. Certification is not required for employment in the state of Alabama, but it is industry preferred. The program will also support the expansion of rural healthcare programs in the state, and as previously mentioned, will share funding with the 2.6 million fiscal year state grant. Over the implementation period of this program, it is also expected to generate 1.2 million in tuition. The staff is recommending approval of this program.
Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The program is approved. Thank you, Ms. White. The information items 1 through 7 are normally accepted or not accepted by the commission as a whole. The chair entertains a motion to approve the items collectively.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The information items are accepted. Item H is adjournment. So we've moved through a big agenda this morning. The chair entertains a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.